First of all, you need no introduction on this channel. Most of our viewers watch your channel more than they watch this channel. And I'm a big fan of your work. Big respect from our region to yours. Uh, Brother Mahmood, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and greetings to all of my viewers in Pakistan. I'm a big fan of the viewers from Pakistan and constantly get feedback from them. So much appreciated, and thank you very much for inviting me to your show.
It's a pleasure. Mahmoud, I want to walk backwards from today and walk us like 2 weeks back. Make us understand what happened with the food crisis, where we are right now, and how it happened.
The food crisis is something that didn't even begin 2 weeks back. Firstly, as your viewers will be aware, especially those who have been following the Palestinian case for a long time, Palestine has been occupied since 1948. More occupation happened in 1967 when Israel expanded its occupation to Gaza, the West Bank, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. Ever since then, the Palestinians lived in certain times under military rule and in other times under full-blown siege, like in the Gaza Strip. Israel unilaterally withdrew from the Gaza Strip in 2005 as part of a very strategic plan of Israel to split Gaza and the West Bank, but also as a reason for constant attacks coming from the Palestinian resistance inside of the Gaza Strip and the level of fierceness of the resistance in Gaza. You see, Gaza is a little bit different to other regions because of the fierceness of the people's resistance there. The people in Gaza know Israel very well, and they have suffered a lot under Israeli apartheid. From 2005 onwards, the Palestinians, in particular Hamas, they decided to participate in elections because they viewed Gaza as a liberated territory. And they wouldn't participate under elections with occupation present. There were elections, fully democratic elections, monitored by none other than the previous American president, late Jimmy Carter, who said that they were the most democratic elections in the Arab world's history. Hamas won by a landslide. What happens immediately after democratic elections take place? Siege, full-blown siege. Why? Because Israel, Britain, the United States, the EU, they did not like the results. They had their agents from within trying to have a coup, but Hamas was strong enough, especially their armed wing, after, of course, so many concessions and attempts to have a unity government. But when you have another side that is working for Israel, it simply doesn't work. You have two colliding and clashing paths. So the people have been living under siege ever since that time. Israel has a naval blockade. Israel controls who goes in and out of the Gaza Strip. It's a very big concentration camp. It's an open air prison. I mean, we wouldn't even say prison because these people, they had no crime. These people are 73% refugees. Refugees from where? Refugees from my native city of Haifa, or from Asqalan, or from Lud or Ramli, Led or Ramli or Bi'r al-Saba or the Naqab or the Negev Desert as they call it. So that's when the siege began. We're talking about houses that weren't suitable to live in. I'm talking about way before 2023. Most of the younger generations unemployed, people relying on foreign aid, people not knowing where their next meal is coming from on a day-to-day basis, Israel dictating how much goes in and goes out. Of course, then we had Al-Aqsa flood on October the 7th as part of the Palestinian resistance operations, and after many attempts to reach resolutions with Israel, especially in relation to the real Palestinian refugees, Palestinian prisoners being abused, being spat at, being raped, being stormed at by dogs, beaten in the night, starved to death, beaten to death. All of that happens now, and it used to happen before. And the Palestinian resistance had several Israeli prisoners of war since 2014. Israel didn't want to have an exchange with them because they did not want to release any of the Palestinian prisoners or hostages. That happened. The Palestinian resistance told them, we're willing to get into negotiations immediately, end all of this, and give you your prisoners of war back. Because we carried out this operation because there was no progress diplomatically or in talks with you. Benjamin Netanyahu had a different plan. Global powers had a different plan because of the gas fields off the shore of Gaza, over 100 trillion cubic meters of gas. We're talking about big money. And they, of course, wouldn't care about the lives of the Palestinian people. We saw, and of course, many of your viewers would have monitored the situation, how it began, where we are, the genocide, the infanticide, the scholasticide, urbanicide, everything. Total destruction. Israel breaching ceasefires, Israel breaking ceasefires, Israel declaring that they want to go back into a full-blown war, Israel not agreeing, adding more conditions. It reached a stage where they broke the ceasefire in January 2025. After that should have been a first stage of an ongoing process that would lead to a permanent ceasefire. As part of their campaign, and in line with previous genocides that happened in history, by the way, the final phase is the starvation phase. So you couldn't defeat the Palestinian resistance. As a matter of fact, the Palestinian resistance humiliated the supposedly strongest army in the region. Tens of thousands killed and wounded. Military incapable of achieving its goals militarily in Gaza, therefore technically failing and covering that up with the whole destruction and ethnic cleansing attempts. Israel began the starvation campaign. The starvation campaign, why? Firstly, based on their belief that they can actually do that to a population. A lot of what Israel does is based on belief. And that's something that we need to consider. Dehumanizing the Palestinians, the Amalekite statements from Israeli ministers, from Netanyahu and his cabinet, to kill all of the Amalekites, and these references are totally genocidal. So we have an intent of genocide. Then they're doing that to the population to apply pressure on the Palestinian resistance so that they can extract political positions from them, punishing the civilian population. And we have a world, when we talk about the establishments and corporate media and mainstream media, that are complicit to this moment with Israel. And that is something that I have been focusing on in the past couple of days. You have Western countries telling you that, oh yeah, we're going to airdrop aid on the Gaza Strip, we're going to support the population, but they're still not holding Israel accountable or holding Israel liable. They're still not blaming them of genocide. They're saying that the starvation is happening somehow because of a failure for aid to reach into the Gaza Strip. Who's in charge? Who's accountable? Who started this? And also, what is this aid doing exactly? You see, you need 250 airdropped aids and planes to drop aid on Gaza to be an equivalent of a couple of trucks. That's why Netanyahu is encouraging this method, because it's not going to do anything but preserve the starvation campaign. So we have Israel still implementing a campaign of starvation, and that is obvious from everyone in Gaza. You go and follow the people. Forget about what I say, forget about what you go and follow the accounts of people who live in Gaza. Because we have, for the first time in history, a live stream genocide. This is going to go down as a stamp of shame on humanity forever. The people who talk to you about human rights, and it's as if nothing exists when it comes to the Palestinian people or nations that they view as below them. Therefore, the starvation campaign is still continuing. Some Western countries are trying to whitewash their complicity and participation by saying, oh, look, now we're actually landing aid on the Gaza Strip. That is absolutely nothing. First and foremost, what needs to happen here, and everything else is a deviation from that. You need to act to dismantle Zionism. If that's not the end goal, then you are creating the next genocide. Why? Because this ideology is based on violence and genocide. Zionism, a Western ideology, speaking in the name of Judaism, is a violent ideology that is based on supremacy, ethnocracy, Jewish supremacy, apartheid, and violence. If we're not going to talk about that being dismantled from all of historical Palestine, from the Jordan River to the sea, then you're creating the next problem. That's why the people who are talking to you about a two-state solution now are planting the next problem, the next big genocide. So what's happening now is not enough. Unfortunately, it's just whitewashing of the Israeli crimes. The starvation is still ongoing. And all of the recent moves that happened, they prove that pressure can work because something is going in. So clearly there's some influence there, that certain diplomatic moves or threats with sanctions can bring to some results, but they're nowhere near enough. So we still have a catastrophic situation where people are dying from starvation.
Okay. How does the international community reacting to this? Like, can we get specific statements? What is the US doing? What is the UK doing? What are they saying? What is France saying?
To understand the international community, or I wouldn't even say the international community, because the term international community is a misleading term, because it creates the illusion in the minds of the people that it's the world speaking. Do you know who's speaking? The ones who are speaking are a couple of neo-colonialist, arrogant establishments in London, Washington, Paris, and a couple of other European capitals. So we're talking about less than 17% of the world states. And even with that number, with that figure, they're not even representing their own populations. You've seen the protests every week in Britain or in the United States or in other European capitals. To understand their position of and towards Israel, we need to understand, where did Israel come from? Israel is a creation of the Western neo-colonialist establishment. So they withdrew their troops directly, but they kept the puppet regimes, whether it's in the Arab world or in Palestine. In Palestine, they had to make something that will create a constant problem, similar to what the British Empire did between Pakistan and India, and all of that split, by the way. But of course, the Palestinian case is a little bit different because of history, because of the people, and there are geographical and geopolitical differences there. So the Western establishment views Israel as an extension of them. And it doesn't matter what they do, they're going to try and whitewash what they do. That's why in the beginning of the genocide, you didn't hear anyone having any sort of problem with 5, 6, 7, 800 people being killed every single day. The intensity of the killing in the early days, let's not forget that. It reached up to 1,000 being martyred a day. We heard Western leaders giving Israel an open check to carry out a full-blown genocide. The British Prime Minister said that they have a right to cut off food and water and electricity off the civilian population. Then they, of course, tried to change their position. They gave Israel all of that with the hope that Israel might be able to take down the Palestinian resistance within about a month or 45 days. There were unconfirmed reports at the time, in the beginning of this war and this genocide, that Israel's main allies gave it 30 days open check, do whatever you want for 30 days, but after 30 days, that's it. And there's a truth to that. Why? Because after 30 days, so 1-2 months in, when everyone started to see the level of barbarity of these people, the tone started to change slightly. Oh, actually, listen, we need a ceasefire, and we need to do this, and then there was a ceasefire, which was a clear indication that they didn't want this to go on for too long. You see, they don't mind Israel being an apartheid state, a supremacist entity, committing crimes, so long as it's on the low, so long as it's under the carpet, so long as it's with a nice image of calling for peace. But what they were met with is the most extreme government in Israel's history that, in my opinion, will never be matched even in the future. So you can't even get more right-wing than this. So the Western establishments, led by the United States, because we need to talk about it in the form of it's the United States and its proxies, like European countries, the European foreign policy. It's dictated by the United States. It's not like the European countries are independent. No. After World War II, the United States dictates what the European countries do. Slight differences here and there, nothing substantial and nothing significant.
This guy has also been
They were
this guy Netanyahu has been also been in office since quite a long time now.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a psychopathic maniac, and he sees himself as a man on a mission. And he has people like supporting him from a religious perspective. They view him as a holy person. In one of my previous videos recently, I spoke about his brother-in-law, who's an Israeli rabbi, who said that Netanyahu can only be replaced by the Messiah, the son of David. Imagine that. And he views himself very highly. He wants to be remembered as the great hero of the state of Israel. He's a psychopathic
What does his
maniac.
number look like in their assembly? How much weight does he have? What does his voters look like number wise? Does he come with a good majority? Does he come with coalitions? What is going on inside their assembly?
Oh, inside the government.
Yeah,
Okay. So firstly, just to finish off with the Western establishment view, and I will get to that.
yeah.
They don't have a problem with Israel. They just don't want it to be at the level of clarity that Israel is doing everything. And they don't want it to be so blatant. And thankfully, with the public pressure, they're being forced to have these moves. But again, these moves are not enough. That's why the pressure needs to remain as it is and even increase, so that concrete measures are taken to stop the genocide and apply pressure on Israel and apply pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. In relation to Benjamin Netanyahu, you can tell his narcissistic and psychopathic traits by the years that he's been in office. How? Netanyahu led Israel to 6 elections in 7 years. Why? Because he was facing corruption charges. Many of the people who were aligned with him previously left him because they realized how much of a psychopathic man he is when they had a coalition with him. That led to Benjamin Netanyahu having governments and coalitions with a fringe majority. So they were always fragile. He started to create positions of ministers without a case or without a file. Why? So that he can pay them money. Basically, bribery. Bribery to have coalitions with so many unnecessary ministries in the country, only for him to have a coalition. But those coalitions would always be fragile. He'll have 1 or 2 with the majority. Therefore, each person would feel that he or she is very valuable, and they can take his government down. That's why it led Benjamin Netanyahu to have a coalition with people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich. These people were like a no-no in Israeli politics, whether you're right or left, or what's called right and left, because it's Zionism at the end of the day. So he eventually had a coalition with them just to be a prime minister, knowing how harmful that is for the image of the state of Israel, knowing how harmful it is for the security of Israel, and knowing how much trouble these people can cause. And now that's been evident for the past 2 years. Genocidal statements, they are the ones who are also pushing him to continue with this genocide. They are the ones who are outright calling for the extermination of the people of Gaza. And Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't really mind because they are preserving his government. And also, Western countries who, sometimes blame the settlers or will tell you, oh, look at the settlements and look at the settlers. That's also a way to whitewash Israel, because that's not the settlers. That's Israel as a whole. This is how the country was established. And he's still being protected to this day, saying that some of Israel's main allies are losing patience with the country slowly. And that shows you how effective the act of the population, because all of this, or a big chunk of it, is a result of the constant pressure of the populations. And if we're talking about globally, especially because internally it's primarily the people of Gaza and the resistance in Gaza forcing Israel to have concessions, but globally clearly shows that pressure does work, protesting works, people being active online, all of that works, because some people try and underestimate their influence. Do not underestimate.
Okay, so whenever we start a discussion, whenever we see a discussion happening between pro Palestinians and the other side, the only argument that they come up these days is the October attack. Give us a piece of your mind on the October attack. What do you think about it?
October attack, if you want to if you want to summarize it in a short sentence, prison break, the victim finally slapping the oppressor. I like to give an example of Palestine as a woman was constantly abused, not by one man, but by a group of people. But that woman is brave and resilient. In Al-Aqsa flood, it stood up and it slapped its rapist. Slapped only, by the way. It didn't okay, we can say more than a slap, because, Al-Aqsa flood on October the 7th, that was an intense attack from the Palestinian resistance. That's why the propaganda machine was very quick. You see, if we were talking about any two countries, would the mainstream media be recruited immediately to tell you, oh, that side has a right to defend itself and we condemn the other side? Would they tell you, oh, this is the most horrific massacre in history? Would they start using the Holocaust? Would they start telling you that the other side must surrender unconditionally? Would they start using propaganda to justify the upcoming genocide, beheaded babies, raped women? All of that nonsense. That was debunked in Israel, by the way. The liars were exposed in Israeli media. Some of them who were stating that, oh, children were killed and raped. Why did they do all of that? We clearly had a plan here. Firstly, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's coming following decades of Zionist oppression. And Israel, with the genocide, proved exactly why October the 7th happened. Because after the genocide happened, people started to say, oh, October the 7th, that was nothing. Because that's what Israel does. Why did they have to add so much propaganda to what happened on October the 7th? October the 7th started off as a military operation. It was a huge failure for Israel. And then it expanded. But the Palestinian side, the Palestinian resistance, told you. The spokesperson of Al-Qassam brigades, he came up with a statement just days after October the 7th saying, we're willing to immediately start a negotiation process and end the military operation and return your prisoners of war. Why? Because we took prisoners of war, because we have more than 6,000 hostages in Israeli dungeons. That's why, because we've been trying to negotiate with you for 9 years without any success. So we had to do something. And it's not like they didn't warn Israel, they did. But Israel didn't listen because they thought that they can pass a few billions to Hamas in Gaza and they would be pleased and they'd become another corrupt Palestinian authority similar to the one in the West Bank. But the Palestinian resistance in Gaza is looking for the greater picture, is looking for the historical rights of the Palestinian people, is looking to live in dignity, is looking to get the basic human rights that they deserve. And Israel was constantly ignoring that with the support of the world, because the world didn't have a problem with the system ongoing. And in relation to any debates that you talk about, for number one, certain debates, if you ask me personally, and everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion, certain debates with the Zionists are completely pointless, if you ask me. Why? Because you have a person 2 years into a full-blown genocide defending or denying the mass murder of children, of women, or even justifying it, supporting an ethno-state, supporting all of Israel's barbarism inside of the Gaza Strip, and completely taking everything out of context. Now, it's probably popular, online to have two people in a heated debate, but that's not in any way to try and reach the truth. That's just for one side to debunk what the other side is saying. And usually, of course, it's the Palestinian side or the pro-Palestinian side wiping the floor with every Zionist, because evidence is way too much for them to handle. As a matter of fact, even some Zionist loudmouths started to change tone now. Some presenters online, they started to slightly shift now and use the term genocide, for example, or war crimes, or mention that there are children being killed. My friend, children have been killed way before October the 7th, regularly, whether in the West Bank or Gaza, as if they're numbers again. So if you see a debate online, it's popular, and it's cool for people to watch, but that's not a conversation or a debate that is intended to happen between two parties to try and reach the truth or to something better, some sort of solution. It's not that. And that's simply because it's been so evident now how far both sides are. And when we say both sides, if we talk about the Zionist side and the Palestinian side and the rest of the world, or anyone with an a pair of open eyes, you see exactly what is happening. How can anyone come out now, 2 years after all of this, and justify what Israel is doing inside of the Gaza Strip, or deny the suffering of the Palestinian people? Who thinks that 2 years following a full-blown genocide, that the term anti-Semitism can be some sort of an excuse or something to even be used, when Israel is acting in the name of Judaism and murdering children in the name of Judaism? Who's harming the image of Judaism here? Me or Israel? Who's causing that? That's why you have more Jewish people speaking up, anti-Zionist conference in Vienna, trying to have a home for people who oppose Zionism, a real home, which is something very significant. We're too far out. And if you ask me, we are witnessing the death of Zionism. 10 years from now, things will be different. And the reason that Israel used this level of barbarity, and the reason why the Western establishment supported it, because they know it's heading towards the end, so we're giving them the final shot. Otherwise, it would have been in their interest to allow Israel to do that for the sake of Israel itself. Think about it. If Israel had an interest in preserving itself as a real, victim state, they could have used what happened on October the 7th and reach a deal very soon after and still show the world that, look,
Wow.
we were victims,
Wow.
but then we had a deal, right? Right or not? They would have been the
Yep.
victims.
Yep.
And they would have shown the world that, look, oh my God, these Hamas are the bad guys and the Palestinians are the bad guys. They didn't. They didn't, and they continued. And to be fair, the two options were bad for them in the long run. But if they conceded initially, they would have bought themselves more time because the public opinion wouldn't shift so much against them. And they view the public opinion as something very, very crucial. Why? Firstly, because they're going to have to live with the fact that there's a group of people here that have a level of fierceness and guts to conduct something like that against us. The other thing is, go all out, show your true colors, and end your legitimacy for good. Israel will not be recovering from this. Israel will never be able to recover from what it's conducted in the past 2 years. Whether we have a ceasefire tomorrow or in 2 weeks or in 2 years, if Netanyahu collapses and we have a government that talks about peace or what have you, Zionism is on its way out. And the sooner the people realize that, the merrier.
You're right, actually. The thing that you're pointing out, friends being fatigued, slowly, people leaving the camp of Israel. What do you have to say about France? About them saying that we're going to accept Palestine? What do you have to say about that?
It's another attempt from France to whitewash its position. How? What kind of state are they talking about? Number one. Firstly, before that we talk about the state, what is the priority that we have now? The priority that we have now is to end the suffering of our starving brothers and sisters in Gaza who are dying because of hunger. These people don't have a minute or an hour to wait. And that should put us in a position of not having a minute or an hour to wait and work on ending what's happening to them, to the civilian population. Is that less important than recognizing a Palestinian state? No. The most important thing now is to stop a genocide. How do you stop a genocide? Firstly, recognizing that there is a genocide. Western countries are not recognizing that there's a genocide. Secondly, addressing the perpetrator who's committing a genocide. No one is saying that Israel's committing any crime, even with their forked tongues and constant deception. They're not saying Israel is responsible, stop it now. The British Prime Minister came up the other day, people are starving to death because there's failure to allow aid in. Who's the cause of the failure? Who is not allowing aid to go in? Who's shooting people when they go and seek aid? Who are you trying to fool exactly? So this attempt from France and other Western countries is an attempt to whitewash the Israeli crimes and also save their position, protect themselves. Why? Number one, we're talking about establishments and countries that committed far worse crimes than Israel in their history. The British Empire killed millions. The French killed millions across the world. We're talking about the authorities and the countries at the time. Many Western countries, when in their colonial eras, they killed millions of people. So France used to kill 50 and 60,000 Algerians a day when they were occupying Algeria. Algeria, 1 million martyrs. It's a famous saying, the 1 million martyr nation, Algeria, before they expelled the French occupiers. So they share the same view with Israel, a colonialist mindset, a racist mindset. We view these people as below us, of other nations. whether they're Palestinian or other Arab nations or other Muslim nations or African nations or other black nations, they are below us. Let's not disregard the racist element and the supremacist element, because them not talking about it blatantly doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Otherwise, how on earth can they not recognize the suffering of the people? Why is their tone changing from one country to another? Now, I'm not saying this is the sole reason, but it's definitely part of the reason. Them viewing themselves as superior. Then they're making this step, likewise with the UK, and now Canada stated that other countries too, lots of them are talking about September, in a way to try and apply diplomatic pressure on Israel. Indeed, there's something happening there. However, that is without doubt due to the public pressure against them. If there was no public pressure, trust me, if there was no public pressure, if there was no uproar, and even if the scenes of genocide were on social media, they would have allowed Israel to get away with even more than this.
That's true.
The only reason that they are taking action is because their populations are applying pressure internally. If Israel was committing a genocide, starving the people to death, and no one was saying anything, and mainstream media ignores it anyway, no one would have done anything. That's why people need to remember that activism is effective, and at the end of the day, it can bring results.
The world saw missiles dropping into Tel Aviv. We had pictures coming all over from the world, and we saw a lot of things. And most of the people didn't care. So what you're saying actually is true. Now the world, you guys have come so far that now the world seems it doesn't care about Israel anymore.
No, it's not that they just don't care. They were celebrating.
Yep.
Do you see the shift? They're celebrating. Bomb, bomb, Tel Aviv. That's a song that
Yeah.
became a very famous song. Everyone commenting, great, more needs to be done. Celebrating and saying Iran finished the job. We need more. Israel went and killed the leaders of the resistance. They're hailed as martyrs, to a level where Western leaders started to say, oh, you can't say rest in peace to a resistance leader. Do you see the shift? Gaza, just rightfully so, in Arabic, we call it al-harb al-kashifa, the all-revealing war. It revealed Western countries. It revealed Zionism. It revealed the fake Arab regimes. It revealed the fake scholars. It revealed the fake humanists. It revealed the fake women's rights activists when they were silent about Gaza. It revealed every fake individual on earth. Fake human rights talks, fake religious people. All of the fakery has been exposed to a level where now everything is clear. They pulled the rug from under Israel. Who imagined, can you imagine 2 years ago, no Gaza, no nothing. No war, no genocide. Iran decides to attack Israel. The whole world would be what? The Ayatollah regime and the Islamists, this and that. Now, people in the United States and Europe, thank you, Iran. God bless them. God bless anyone who attacks Israel. Thank you. Finish the job. We're ashamed of our countries. Some people tell me I'm ashamed to be American regularly because of their country's conduct abroad. So you're seeing a huge shift here. And that's not only in relation to Gaza, by the way, that's in relation to the decades of propaganda against the Muslim world and the dehumanization and the Islamophobia and the whole garbage propaganda that they've been spewing to justify their wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and WMDs and the 9/11 false flag and all of that garbage. Everything is collapsing. And the recovery from that, I tell you one thing, it's impossible. There is no recovery. The only thing they can do is damage limitation. And even with that, they're failing miserably. Why? Because it's coming every single day. Even with suppression attempts, even with shadow banning, even with all of that, we can still see everything on social media. So that's why I say that Zionism is dying and we're witnessing the collapse. And usually towards the collapse, every country or every empire will have the last huge strike. I'm not saying that we reach the end of it, by the way. We could see something uglier. That's a possibility. There's an absolute prospect that there might be something even worse than what we saw. But we are in that time. We are in that time of change. And that change is coming simultaneously with the demise of the American empire and the rise of a multipolar world.
Mahmoud bhai,
It's
explain this
not
to us.
necessarily.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Explain this to us.
No, no, sure.
How does Israel drag America into Iran? How does Israel do this?
Well, of course, there's the Zionist lobby inside of the United States. The Zionist lobby is a very strong lobby in the United States and other European countries. Zionism as a movement is a Western tool, wearing the coat of Judaism, using the victimhood of World War II and the Holocaust, inflating all of that victimhood, relating any criticism of Israel to being anti-Jewish, to make their neo-colonialist entity over there bulletproof. You can't criticize it, you'll be anti-Jewish. You can't touch them because they were promised there. And we support them because they have a right to defend themselves and people tried to kill them before, therefore you shouldn't touch them. So the Zionist lobby is very strong. But I think some people exaggerate the United States participation in what happened in Iran. Let me give you an example. The United States and Israel are one, they're interlinked. Israel has influence in the United States, but Israel is a tool of the United States, like it was a tool of Britain before. But the United States took that responsibility after the collapse of the British Empire. The participation of the United States with Israel against Iran came as a rescue rope. It didn't come as anything effective against Iran. Israel in Iran, the military successes, if you want to call that
Yeah.
a military success of Israel in Iran, were targeting certain leading figures, targeting some of the nuclear sites, some of the military sites, and some of Iran's air defenses. Saying that, every military campaign is judged by if it achieved the military objectives or not. This is how we judge a military campaign. What were Israel's objectives? Take down Iran's nuclear program, take down Iran's missile capabilities, and also take down the establishment. They achieved none of that. When they achieved none of that, and when they saw that even with their surprise attack in Iran and the Mossad operatives and all of the strikes, they couldn't stop Iran from attacking Israel and increasing its attacks, they were looking for a way out. Why? Because if the war continued, that would be for the benefit of Iran. It wouldn't be for the benefit of Israel. Israel is tiny, Iran is huge. A street in Tehran is like a city in occupied Palestine, one street. A huge geographical difference. Secondly, Iran's strategic power is much more efficient than Israel's strategic power. Israel's strategic power, although that's slowly, by the way, starting to change with time, they're trying to adapt, is the Air Force. We saw most of the attacks happening by the Air Force, but also through sabotage. Internal operatives using drones, something to do with the air again, and having these targets. More expensive, and then of course the Air Force and the fighter jets. More expensive, time-consuming, risky. Iran's strategic arsenal, missiles. And Iran, there's a different Iran under the ground. There's an Iran over the ground. There's another Iran under the ground. And we are talking about a country, a huge country, an ancient country, a real country with a real history, unlike this pariah state with imposters of fake people creating a fake identity. Now you ask yourself one question, because it really comes down to this point. If Israel, with all of this power, with British intelligence support, with constant United States support, with other European countries supporting them, with arms, with intelligence, with expertise, with weapons, with money, with all of that, couldn't defeat the Palestinian resistance in Gaza and take down even 20%, according to them, by the way, of the tunnel systems in Gaza, how on earth are they going to be successful against Iran? Do you understand how much of a paper tiger they are? And do you understand how much of this perception of Israel is an illusion? Israel is nothing. Do you know what made Israel something? The weakness of the Arab authorities, the disbelief of those who call themselves scholars, and the brainwashing of the mainstream media and propaganda. That's what made them something. They are absolutely nothing. If the countries surrounding occupied Palestine just opened the borders, what would happen? One person said a long time ago, if every Arab person came and threw a bucket of water on occupied Palestine, they'll sink Israel.
Yeah.
They don't even have to militarily intervene. They don't have to go and leave the borders. Leave the borders. Let the people do what needs to be done. Liberate Palestine. So all of that is an illusion. And believe it or not, and I'm not. And by the way, when I analyze it, when I talk about this subject, I try and be as calculated as possible. Some people will tell you need to only use your brain and not use your heart, for example. Although I believe everyone should have a heart when they talk about things like this, especially when they see the level of suffering and misery. But even if we just want to state the facts and without being too emotional or over optimistic or pessimistic or anything, if we look at the progress on the ground now, things aren't going well for Israel. They're trying to portray an image of strength. But the fact of the matter is, 2 years into a full-blown barbaric genocide with over 128,000 tons of TNT, over 6 times the equivalent of the nuclear bombs that landed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki on a civilian population concentrated, and they didn't raise the white flag. Japan surrendered in World War II. Germany surrendered to World War II, when if we want to calculate it based on a percentage, they didn't suffer 2% of what Gaza suffered.
That's
Yet
so true.
despite all of that, the
Brother,
Palestinian resistance isn't raising the white flag.
brother Mahmoud, this reminds us of Yahya Sinwar's last moments. You can see the resilience. It will always remind you of the difference between the two, and the resilience to fight on despite all what has gone wrong. These are the
Yahya
things that
Sinwar's
teach it.
case is a very symbolic one.
Yeah.
Yahya Sinwar's case is a very symbolic one. Why? Because Yahya Sinwar was a prisoner who was released in the 2011 prison exchange deal when the Palestinian resistance took Gilad Shalit as a prisoner of war, then released over 1,000 Palestinians. Sinwar was one of them. He was spending all together, all in all, well over 10 years in Israeli prisons. During his time, he was studying Israel. He was studying poetry, politicians, their lives, their biographies, their relationship with their women, all of that. He was writing poetry there. He knew the Israelis very well. When he went out, he became leader later on of Hamas in Gaza. Despite the fact that he managed to force Israel to allow aid into Gaza and to get more things and more rights for the Gaza Strip, he still had the bigger vision of the historical rights of the Palestinian people. He said that clearly. In 2021, he said the following: if the problems, believe that or not, and then I can give you a video translated from Arabic, he said those exact same words. If the problems of Gaza will not be solved, we will make the whole world stand on one foot. The whole world is standing on one foot now. He said that in 2021. We'll make the whole world stand on one foot if they don't solve the problems of Gaza and the Palestinian people. Netanyahu thought, oh, I can bribe him. I can pass a few hundreds of millions in Qatar. They'll be pleased. But he warned you. He told you, it's not about money. It's about our rights. Give us our rights. Stop it. And it's very simple from Israeli perspective. It's like very simple. Just give the people equal rights. If you give the Palestinians equal rights, you would solve the whole problem. Then it would be visuals. Anyway, it reached, of course, Al-Aqsa flood, all of this battle. Let's remember one thing. He is the political leader of Hamas in Gaza. He's not a military leader. Sinwar, he used to operate in within a smaller organization in Hamas before he was imprisoned that was targeting traitors and collaborators with the occupation, called Majd, or glory. Because from their perspective, they need to cleanse everyone who is a traitor before they do something. The war started, but he was leading the political side. He didn't have to go and fight. No one forced him to fight. Firstly, you don't have to. Secondly, there are more than enough men, believe it or not, to fight. But he chose that path of a leader who goes and directly fights up until the last second, and even when his hand is chopped, he'll throw the final stick on his enemy, who found them by the way, they found him by coincidence. They didn't. He was walking amongst them when they were always saying he's hiding in tunnels and he's using the hostages as human shields and he has a lot of money with his wife and family. All of this lie, all of these lies. When he was over the ground in front of their eyes, fighting them and probably killing hundreds of them. Who knows how many he directly assassinated. And that, in return, look at how that was received globally. Look at how that was received in Western populations. You had military veterans in the United States calling him a hero. People who participated in the American army and other armies in Western countries saying this is a hero of a different caliber, talking about Yahya Sinwar. Imagine an American army veteran saying that about Sinwar. Can you see the level of difference in public opinion and how everything is perceived? To a level where some leaders started to say, you can't say, oh, rest in peace to that person and what have you. They got so bothered by it. Israel got so bothered by the fact that when he was martyred, people were glorifying him. That was very, very problematic for Israel. And he did that, in my opinion, he did that not only as a real translation of what his approach was as a resistance leader in Gaza, but also to make an impact. He knew very well. Firstly, he's a man like all of the other resistance fighters. Faith plays a huge part in them. It's either victory or martyrdom from their perspective. There is no other option. And that's a firm belief of him too. But that was a huge impact, what he has done. The whole world saw a leader of an organization who was offered billions, who was offered a life of luxury, who was offered indefinite power, like other Palestinian leaders who chose the other side, and we saw how wealthy they got, them and their children. He didn't choose that path because the Palestinian resistance is made out of people with solid belief, and they view this world as a temporary thing, but they're not willing to live in an undignified way. Either they live in a dignified way or they die trying. That's from their perspective. So it's an extremely strong message. And despite all of the propaganda of Israel, it was clearly evident that they found him by coincidence after they targeted the place where they thought that there were people fighting him and appeared to be him. And he asked the people around him to leave him. There were people around him who could have dragged him to a tunnel or treated him or whatever it is. He said, you leave me, you go protect yourselves, I'll remain here and fight them up until the last second. And this is how he was martyred.
Those pictures will remain with us forever. So, if you come down to the food crisis, do we have any numbers of the? Do we have the supply chains? How many supply chains go into Gaza, and what are the numbers of deaths? Do we have? Do we have any numbers on deaths?
Well, if we want to start with the talk about the numbers of deaths and martyrdoms in Gaza, the official death toll is the death toll that comes out from the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza. The official death toll is over 60,000, just over 60,000. That number isn't a conclusive number. There are definitely more people who have been killed. But the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza needs to find evidence that that was the person before verifying him dead. It's like you saying someone is missing and you're declaring him dead without finding evidence. So they do their job. Now, that was as a direct result of Israeli killing, okay? When we want to talk about side effects, that could lead to way more deaths in the future. If we want to particularly speak about the starvation campaign, ever since the starvation campaign began several months back, hundreds of people were martyred because of malnutrition. People collapsing, people dying on the way to seek aid, infants dying. And these numbers can grow rapidly because we're already seeing over 90,000 children in Gaza now in phase 5, in the malnutrition phase 5 hunger, which is a very severe and advanced stage. So we can see a point where people will start collapsing in their thousands. It's a very dangerous situation. And by the way, this is a very typical end of kind of an end attempt in a genocide. A very typical final attempt. They try everything, not everything works. They try and starve the population to try and get rid of as many as possible and to make the Palestinian side surrender. Yet even with that, the Palestinian side isn't surrendering, but undoubtedly the global action to stop what's happening must escalate and needs to be at the same level of the starvation campaign, because it isn't a joke. It isn't a joke, women feeding their infants water instead of milk when they have water, when they go and walk for kilometers to get some water, when Israel doesn't allow baby powdered milk to go in, or sanitary or medicines, sanitary products or medicines, basic food, basic necessities. And I think it's our responsibility as human beings collectively to keep all of that action going up until they totally stop this campaign of starvation and genocide.